let's just sew whatever. All right, so now it is time to add the side panels to the main panels, which is so fun. So let's talk about the optional piping detail. What we would do for that is we would mark 1 inch from the top on a side panel. We would take our piping and lay it, or kind of pinch the corner at a 90-degree angle, and then lay it with the raw edge pointing to the long side without a notch. This is the outside of our bag, this is the inside, and you would just baste it into place right there. And then when you attach your main panel, you come in a little ways from your based stitch line. So this is a fun way to add a little drama to your bag. If I liked the idea of this, yeah, I don't really want to add piping to this bag. I usually like to add piping to the connectors and the side panels if I'm going to do it at all. But that is one way to add some fun drama to your bag. So what we're going to do for these side panels is we're going to match up the long side edges. This little notch is going to be pointing towards the inside of your bag and at the bottom. If it's not, you want to reevaluate your life decisions. Make sure you know what you're doing. Just kidding. So we can go ahead and clip all of these together at once. Make sure that you have mirrored pieces. If you don't, again, you need to recut it. But yeah, so they'll be kind of pointing in. If you've made the Peekaboo Beauty bag, which is another one of my patterns, you'll kind of be familiar with this technique and making sure that your notches are pointing towards the outer side of your bag. If things aren't quite lining up, just kind of even them out. You can always trim off a little bit of excess. It's not the end of the world. So that's what that should look like. You'll have your little notches pointing to the inside. And I'm just gonna go ahead and clip all of mine together at this point. So if your bag is looking like this, and that's wrong, you don't want that. Your notches should be pointing towards the inside, and the long side edges will be facing or be touching. They'll match up. That's what I'm looking for. My panels are a little bit long. All right, so now we're going to sew 1/2 inch on the long side. If you need to, you can use a ruler to kind of mark out your seam allowance. I'm just gonna sew that 1/2 inch seam allowance all at once. Again, make sure your notches are at the bottom. Now I'm second guessing myself. No, okay, I did it right. It's like I've made so many of these bags. How can I mess it up? It happens, people mess up. All right. If you added a hidden flap, you shouldn't be sewing through that. It should be far enough away, but in case you made yours longer or anything, make sure you don't make it any longer than 9 inches because that's the width of the finished panel. Actually, the very first time I made this bag, I actually added like a removable zippered wristlet. I will never ever do that again, but it was really fun, but also really difficult. So now I am top stitching the side panels 1/8 of an inch away from the outer edge along the vinyl. If your pieces are a little uneven, just kind of trim it off at the top. I would make sure that your bottoms line up more so than the top, because this is where we're going to add our bottom panel. And if you did decide to add piping, make sure that it is perfectly along the edge before top stitching. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. I think honestly that I just kind of cut this piece a little too long. That's what happens when I don't use a ruler, but yeah, it's looking pretty good so far. And you want to make sure that your seam allowance is pointing towards your main panel. And I thought I would regret not adding Decoville to my main panel, but since I'm adding all of these different pockets, it's actually working out quite nicely. Especially since I've got 2 layers of waterproof canvas on the lower portion of this. So I am digging it so far. And I know people love pockets, so adding an addition of all of these is really up in the game here into it. All right, so our main panel, the main panels are fully done. The side panels are added. It's looking awesome. So let's go ahead and add the bottom panel. You can start with either side you'd like. It's up to you. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna lay that bottom panel along those notches. They should line up pretty perfectly. If not, that's okay. Just kind of even them out. It's not necessary to seam rip unless you're like really, really off. So we're gonna sew along the bottom edge. Do not sew through the stabilizer. It's gonna make it kind of difficult to turn. Just sew right next to it. And start and stop at those notches. And then we're gonna pull this down and leave that seam allowance pointing down. And we're gonna top stitch on the bottom panel vinyl. Okay. And then we're gonna go ahead and repeat that step on the other side. So see how this panel is a little bit shorter. Again, that's my cutting error, or I increased my seam allowance somewhere, but this isn't off enough for me to freak out or anything. It's just like 1/4 of an inch, if that, so no biggie. I'm gonna clip it from the other side, so that way when I flip it over, I can keep an eye on that bottom stabilizer. And I just flipped it over to check to make sure that I couldn't see any of my basting stitches. If you do, you kind of want to adjust that then. But this looks pretty good. I'm going to stitch along the bottom. So now if you're gonna add purse feet, this is where we're gonna do it. You can use kind of any method you would like to on adding these. I'm gonna go ahead and just grab 5 really quick. I think 5 is a nice number. You could add 6 if you wanted, or you could just stick with 4. I've got my washers, and I'm going to, it's going to be 1.5 inches from the outer edge and 1 inch from where we top stitched. So 1.5 inches from the outer edge, 1 inch from where we top stitched along all sides. And then we're going to measure 6.5 from the center. Oh wait, is it 12 inches? No, it's 13. Did you design this pattern, Lauren? Yes, yes I did. Okay, then you should know. Okay, and then 2 inches down and up, whichever. So there are where the 5 purse feet are gonna go. I'm gonna grab my seam ripper and just poke a little hole, or a slit, I should say. That's where those are gonna go. And then when you insert your purse feet, you want to make sure they're going in the same direction as the slits that you've just made. You don't want to try and put a, like, you don't want it to be like a plus sign. You want them to be parallel. Well, they're not parallel, they're exact. Anyway, you don't want to put it in perpendicular to the line you just made. That makes sense. There we go. And then I'm adding the washers. Your purse feet will hold best if you insert them into the, not the circle in the middle, but I've been kind of lazy and my hands are hurting, so this is how I'm gonna do it. You can add a little bit of tape to them if you're worried about them popping out, a little black duct tape. Whatever you would like to do. Okay. So there are the purse feet all added and ready to go. Now we can turn the page. And we're gonna lay the main panels right sides together. Gonna match it up along the bottom and clip all the way. And sew using a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a stitch length of like 4 or so. Repeat that with the other side. And I am not going to be adding a crossbody strap to this bag, but if you are adding a crossbody strap option, you do not want to trim your seam allowance until you've added that. Just gives it a little extra strength. So you can add it before or after you square the bottom, but you'll want to open this side seam and lay your connector along the side. So hopefully that makes sense. But I will not be adding that. I'm gonna square the bottom. I'm inserting my hand into the corner and just kind of pushing it flat, opening up my side seam, and then I'm clipping it and then I'm going to turn it over. So hopefully the bottom corner view gives you an idea of what we're looking at. But we're going to sew just from stitch line to stitch line. You don't want to go too far past it. And if you need to secure your stitching, just kind of do it at an angle within your seam allowance on the bottom panel itself. So back stitch, and then just kind of going in at an angle right there. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys. If not, we're gonna do it again. So just kind of put that, close that opening with your hands. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Lay that flat. Put it together. Perfect. And then now, if you need to, you can trim your seam allowance. Just try not to trim through your bottom panel stitching. This is kind of how the Emily bag is done as well, so pretty easy. And that is the exterior pretty much finished. So we're gonna work on the lining and get this bag completed. I'm just looking in and I see loose threads, that's all. But everything looks pretty good so far. So keep it up, guys. Keep it up.